Hello, my name is Mark Prentice from Next Dimension Games and I'm the designer of Go Ahead Punk. I'm going to make a few short videos to take you through some of the fundamentals of the game, beginning with this one. We're just going to look at movement, basic movement, and the board itself and how you move around the board. So if we have a look over here, we have a key in the corner of the board which shows the basic movement types. So we have black for road, blue for freeway, green dotted for cable car, dark green dashed for streetcar, boundary lines and tunnels. So let's have a quick look and see how it all works. So if we take Eddie here, for example, and he's on this place, the cops have a basic movement of 3. So it's not rocket science. If it's your turn and you want to move by road, you would simply move between the stars. 1, 2, 3. Simple as that. Freeways count as a single move. So if you're using a freeway, you can move a lot further. So let's have a look at this example here. So Eddie's on position 19 and it's his turn. He could go 1, 2, 3, because freeways can be combined with the rest of your move, and you can move an unlimited distance on a connected piece of freeway. So it has to be connected. So for example, in that example there, he wouldn't be able to go 1, 2, 3. Because this section of freeway is not connected to that one. Similarly up here, he could go 1, 2, 3, but he couldn't go 2, 3 over there because it has to be continuous motorway. So that's the cops. As I say, they have a basic movement of 3, and we can have a little look to see how some of their cards affect movement. So if we go in here, let's have a look. Lights and Siren and Step on It are similar cards. So Step on It is move +1. So let's say Eddie was here and he decided to draw rather than moving, and he drew this card here, Step on It. He has an option. He can either keep the card for later, or he can use it immediately to move. And if he did that, obviously it would just be 1, 2, 3, his basic movement, 4, using the card, and then he discards it. Same thing with Lights and Siren. So let's have a look at Frank. So Frank has basic movement of 3, but if he wants to use this card that he may be holding or that he's just drawn, he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe, using his +2 to his basic movement. Now, both of those are temporary, obviously just to be used once. However, there is a way the cops can increase their movement for the entire game, and that is if they draw a card. So let's say Frank has drawn this card here, the 1969 V8. He can also draw an inventory card because there might be something in the trunk for him. We won't touch on inventory today, but that's something else he can do. After he's taken his inventory card, he discards the card, he finds the relevant token and adds it to his player board. And that's to remind him that for the rest of the game he has +1 movement. So for the rest of the game, Frank moves 4, not 3. So let's take that example. Let's say that Frank was here and he has the car, and he also then draws a move +2. Very bad news for Stinger. Let's say Stinger's just been revealed as being, I don't know, down here on a hit position. Frank can suddenly move, instead of his basic 3, he can suddenly move 6. So he could go 1, 2, 3, 4, because he's got a car. There's no way I can get to, I can't quite get to Stinger. 5, 6, because of the move +2. So that is how the cops can enable themselves to move around a bit faster around the board, either with a car or by drawing a movement card. So let's have a look at Stinger. How does he move? Well, the answer is exactly the same way as the cops. He can use roads, he can use freeways, but he has two extra forms of transport: the famous San Francisco cable cars and the streetcar network, or trams as we call them in the UK. He can only use those two modes of transport though if he has the relevant cards. So this is his pack. There's about 36 cards in the pack, and there are 2 streetcar passes. So let's say he drew a streetcar pass. He can keep that until some point later in the game when maybe he needs it. And let's draw a little scary scenario for him. Let's say he's here, and the cops are right on his tail. Big problems. However, it's his turn, and what he does is he plays a streetcar pass. So he discards the streetcar pass card, and he can now incorporate the streetcars as part of his move. So unlike the cops, Stinger's basic move is 4. So he starts with 4. The cops can get 4 if they get a car, but he starts with 4. So he could do something like this. He could go 1, 2, using his pass, 3, 4. Now, as you can see, that's a very powerful card. There's only 2 in the pack, but they can get him out of a bit of a scrape if he's really struggling. So you might wonder how he managed to go across this bit here. And if we go back to the key, you'll see this green dotted line here is tunnel. So wherever you have that, they are considered connected, because it's basically underground sections of the line, which mirrors exactly what happens in San Francisco. So yeah, so that's continuous through there, and that's a continuous move between 126 and 129. Okay, how else can he move? Let's have a look. He may have his cable car pass, and that works in exactly the same way as the streetcar pass. So if the cops are on his tail, I don't know, something like this, and he gets to here, he can use the cable cars. So he could, on his move of 4, he could go 1, 2, maybe 3, and then maybe use the freeway. 4. Very useful, as you can see. The only remaining card for Stinger for his personal movement is the bus hijack card. He does have the option to hijack a bus, and he can take it up to 7 places. However, normally, obviously, we have his piece on the board today, so you can, I'll just turn it round. There we go. So you can see what I'm doing. Normally, of course, it's a hidden movement game and his piece wouldn't be on the board. However, if he uses the bus hijack card, he does have to reveal his endpoint. So let's say he was here, and it's his go. Now, instead of moving, so he can't take his usual 4, he can move 7 instead. However, he does have to reveal his endpoint. So he would play his bus hijack card, discards that. He hijacks a bus and can move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe, 6, 7. However, he would leave his piece on the board. On his next turn, of course, he can disappear again, but for every time he uses the bus hijack, he needs to leave his piece on the board. He has one further movement-related weapon in his arsenal, which is the jam card. If he draws the jam card from this pack, he's entitled to place the jam token on the board. What the jam token does is you place it in any district he wishes. It doesn't have to be the district he's currently in. It can be any district he wishes. And what's happened is he has damaged the traffic light controls in that given district, causing a big log jam. So what happens is the cops can only move a maximum of 1 through that district. In other words, the cops can only make 1 continuous move in the district. You cannot make 2 continuous moves in the district. So let's have a look how that works. Well, this is quite a good example actually. So he's maybe down here. The cops are all above him. He draws the jam card, so he decides to place it in Western Addition. Quite a good choice of district because it's right in the middle of the board. It's also one of the larger districts as well. Now, incidentally, I will just briefly go back to the key to explain this final one that we haven't covered, which is the district boundary lines. So these aren't movement lines. They're simply to tell you where the edges of each district lie. So that's Western Addition. So he's had his go and he's placed the jam card. So Frank, for example, let's say, well, we know Frank's got a car, hasn't he? So Frank can move 4. So Frank could go 1, 2, but then he wouldn't be able to move again because he's moved into Western Addition and he cannot make 2 continuous moves in Western Addition. So on his next turn, he could do something like move 1 and then move out and then continue. But on this turn, because he's moved 1, 2, 3, he cannot use his 4th bonus move for the car because of the jam token. And the same would apply for the cops. Now, see, I think Eddie could be okay, actually. I'm looking at Eddie, and Eddie can nip in and out in 1 move. So Eddie would be able to go 1, 2, 3. Eddie would be able to squeeze through because he's not moving 2 continuous moves within Western Addition. So that is the jam token, and that concludes the kind of movement related cards in Stinger's pack. So let's go back to the cops, and the only other movement related card they have is the Transit Strike. So if cops draw the Transit Strike card, it simply means that Stinger discards any held travel passes, which is a bit of a pain because let's say he was planning on his next move to use the cable car pass, so he was holding that. Cops didn't know whether he had it or not because of course it would be face down, but they play the transit card, Transit Strike, and then Stinger would have to unfortunately discard any travel passes that he is currently in possession of. And that's about it for this video. That is talking about movement on the board and moving around the board, and we'll touch on other subjects in future videos. Thanks very much for watching.